Jaya Radha Gopinath Radha Gopinath Radhe. Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe. O Jaya Vrishabhanu Nandini Radhe Radhe Vrishabhanu Nandini Radhe Radhe. O Radhe 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 Radhe. Om Aginati Mirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Taralaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Pravajantam Anapetyam Apetya Krityam Dvaipaino Viraha Katara Achuhava Putreti Tammayatayo Taravo Vinidustam Sarvabhutam Munimanatoshmi Bhaktya Vihina Aparada Lakshay Shittascha Karmadi Taranga Madhye Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapana Vrinde Namaste Charana Ravindam Bhajami Radham Aravinda Netram Smarami Radham Madhurashmitasyam Vadami Radham Karuna Bharadram Tato Mamanasti Katyena Chapi. I first of all offer millions and millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om, Asto Tarasara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And the same again, millions and millions of times unto the lotus feet of our beloved Nitya Lila Pravishta Om, Asto Tarasara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, Dandavat pranams. So, we've discussed something of the stage called Sargo and Vishargas. But this morning, straight away, I want to go through these 10 stages with you and have you write them down or memorize them, whatever, so that you can see this connection or these different stages in the Bhagavatam. It helps. The Bhagavatam is so vast, and I'm realizing that there's no way I'm going to be able to touch on all the different topics at all just in 7 or 8 hours. But if I can speak on some of the topics, then you'll get an idea of how the rest of it is going to unfold. So it's very helpful indeed to know these 10 stages. So the first stage is called Sargo, S-A-R-G-A or S-A-R-G-A, yes, Sarga. So, and Sarga we've already discussed. And basically, it's about the first creation by Vishnu. So, Sarga is how you say it separately, but in the verse, it's Atra Sargo. But when you change the grammatical term to say it separately, it's Sarga. In the verse, it's Atra Sargo, Vishagas Cha. But to say it just on its own, it's written as Sarga. And Sarga means the creation by Lord Vishnu. It's the first creation. As we've described, the importance of this Bhagavatam is to appreciate Beg your pardon?
Where are we now in the sense of?
Well, this I'm going to explain in a minute.
Right.
Be patient. Because it's not straightforward, Jumana. You can't apply material intelligence to the way the Bhagavatam is structured. I'm realizing this more every day. I came here trying to set a structure, and I've realized it's very, very difficult because there's not a structure as such. There's something which I'm beginning to explain this morning, but within that structure, it's sometimes something from a seventh stage is included right in the beginning.
You mean in linear time?
Yeah. Let me explain the structure first, and then I'll explain how it moves around in the Bhagavatam, according to the desire of Shukadeva Goswami. But these principal stages are what are described within the current of the Bhagavatam. So the first is Sarga, which means the creation of the 5 gross elements, the 5 objects of the senses, the 10 senses, the mind, the intelligence, false ego, the total material energy or universal form. So this is Sarga, and this is like the Mahatattva, the entire material creation and how it manifested. When we understand this point very clearly, first of all with our intelligence, always understanding begins in the intelligence, and then by our various practices of bhajan sadhan, it's carried from the intelligence into the heart, just like the description of the Sangvit Shakti. As we become more advanced in our practice, then this Sangvit Shakti, this direct potency from Srila Gurudev, will manifest in the form of knowledge in the mental faculty. And then from there, it will start to become realized within the heart, and then this Hladini Shakti, or Ananda, will manifest simultaneously. So these 2 potencies of knowledge and bliss. Knowledge will produce the bliss. It's like if you have knowledge that water is good for my body. You know all about water, and then you drink it. That's like realization. And then the third aspect is the happiness you experience from that drinking or from that taste. So it's like in 3 stages. So knowledge is also like that. We hear, we assimilate, and then we realize. Oh, Prabhuji, can you please get me the 3rd canto from your royal selection? Thank you. So, Sarga is that total creation. Now, within the descriptions of the Bhagavatam, as I've described, there are many interactive conversations between Uddhav and Vidura, between Vidura and Maitreya, Sonaka Rishi and Sutta Goswami, all of these different conversations. So in the first 9 cantos, there are different references to this Sarga. It's not just all in the 2nd canto or all in the 3rd canto. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has said predominantly it's within the 3rd canto, but it's also referenced greatly, of course, in the 2nd canto. So if ever you have an opportunity to read the commentaries of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he describes, for example, in the 3rd canto, I think it's 30-something chapters. 3rd canto is 33 chapters. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he describes the first 4 or 5 chapters. Big one?
You need for your throat?
He gave me something else today. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. He describes explicitly which constitute the stage of Sarga, which are Visharga, which are Poshana, etc., Sthanam, the different stages. So first I have 2 volumes. Thank you. Of course. Thank you. So, okay, I'll just go straight through these first, and you can write them down and begin to become familiar with the stages, even separately from the chapters that they're in. So, Sarga. The second stage is Visarga. V-I-S-A-R-G-A. Visarga. And this is the secondary creation. And this is the work of Lord Brahma that we discussed something yesterday. We discussed the manifestation of the day that he dropped in front of the demigods, the dawn. We discussed the night, how its qualities are hunger and thirst, and how this developed from the backside of Lord Brahma. And we discussed also the manifestation of the twilight, the evening time, how that also is of a demoniac quality. So these are all aspects of the creation of Lord Brahma. This includes the pastimes of Daksha, the great progenitor, and all the other sons of Lord Brahma that progenited the planet, filled the planet up with the human species. Also, the Manus, their purpose is also to fill the universe. So that's overlapped with the Manus description. So that's the second stage, okay? We got two, Sargo, Visargas. The third stage is called Sthana, S-T-H-A-N-A-M, Sthanam. And when it's written as Sthana, without the M on it, so grammatically. So now this Sthana stage is described very simply as the maintenance by Vishnu. And this is within the descriptions of the 5th canto. In the 5th canto, there are all the descriptions of the different planetary systems. And these are all resting on Vishnu. Also, within this stage of Sthanam is the understanding of the superiority of Vishnu to Brahma and Lord Shiva. Even though Lord Brahma appears to create all these planetary systems, even though Lord Shivji is actually superior to Lord Brahma in his potencies, they are not as superior as Lord Vishnu. So this is solidified in this stage of Sthanam. Sthanam, basically maintenance by Vishnu. So that's a whole nother area, a whole nother topic of juice, of relish for the sadhak who is intent on understanding this entire picture of what I am doing here. What is everything? The Srimad Bhagavatam answers every question in existence, and even the questions we don't even know about yet. It'll pose questions to us and then give us answers. So it's the complete law book, hand guide for life. Now the 4th stage is called Poshana. P-O-S with a dot underneath it, A-N-A. Poshana. And in the verse it's described as Poshanam. Again, it has the M on it grammatically. So Poshana. And this Poshana is a description of the special care and protection of devotees by the Lord. Surrendered devotees are taken care of. So this is like in the 6th canto with descriptions of Ajamil. And also Jad Bharat comes under this category. He's protected by the mercy of the Lord that he has remembrance of his previous births in the body of a deer. And then in the body of Jad Bharat himself, he remembers previously. And of all the different personalities like Chitraketu, Vritrasura, also they're all under the direct protection of the Lord. So all of the great devotees that are described. Now sometimes these great devotees are described at the very beginning. And sometimes they're described at the beginning and sometimes they're described at the end. This is why trying to make it a sort of sequential step by step is not possible. So we have to be extremely broad-minded. Actually, it requires more than broad-mindedness, it requires time. It requires actually years and years of hearing these different pastimes, appreciating their moods. Of course, in principle, as I've explained repeatedly, the purpose of the Bhagavatam is to glorify Sri Krishna. And not only just glorify Krishna in Dwarka or Mathura, but glorify Krishna in Sri Vrindavan. There is a universe of difference. For example, today we're going to talk something of Kadama Muni in the 3rd canto, the great worshipper of Lord Vishnu. Now his Ishtadev is in Vaikuntha, Kapila Dev. It's like a 4-armed form. This is his Ishtadev. But it's very, very beautiful to recognize the intensity of his worship of that personality. But nevertheless, this still comes under this heading of Poshana. Okay, now we have the 5th stage, and it's called Uti. U-T-I. And it's described in the verse Uttaya. Stanam Poshanam Uttaya is the 2nd line of this verse. So Uti. And this is described as the urge for creation or initiative power that is the cause of all inventions according to the necessities of time, space, and objects. Okay, so this creative urge. Now, this is not the creative urge of Lord Brahma. It is not the creation inspired by Vishnu himself. It's the creative urge within man, which is described as the mode of passion. Ultimately, this Uttiya means Kama Sevana. It means people like Hiranyakashipu, who had a great desire to control. Hiranyaksha, who had a great desire to control. This is actually Kama Sevana. Kama Sevana is not a godly quality if it's focused on glorification of something in this realm, in this world. So this Uttaya is this passionate desire to increase something within this world. Actually, artists, etc., come under this description. If you're an artist for Krishna and glorifying Krishna, that is a purified form of Kama Sevana. But if you're passionately trying to make a beautiful palace or something of that nature, for what purpose, unless it's to glorify the Lord, then it comes under this lower category of Karma Sevana. So it's described that the 7th canto describes Kama Sevana, even though simultaneously the great devotee, Prahlad, is glorified within that context, within that pastime. That is a different stage, that is a different aspect. So this is not just a block. Yes, this is Kama Vasana. Within that, there is the sweetness of Poshana, the protection of Prahlad by Krishna. So we have to be very broad-minded, as I described, to try and we pull out all of this, but see the entirety. After some time of meditating on these topics and the way they are linked together, then some clarity will come. But it's nothing to do with material ability to be able to grab that sequence, which is why I found it so difficult coming and giving these classes, because I was hoping that I could give you some sort of material step by step, but I'm realizing more and more it's just simply not like that. It's not made like that. And I've talked to other senior devotees and they've explained that this is the case. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he explains himself that this is not the case. But nevertheless, we can get some impression of these stages, of the topics that are discussed. So this 5th stage is called Uti, Kama Vasana. Now the 6th stage is called Manvantara. There are 14 manus in a day of Lord Brahma. Each manu has a rulership of 72 cycles of 4 yugas. Satya, Treta, Dwapara, Kali. Satya, Treta, Dwapara, Kali. Times 72 is the lifespan of one manu. So the manus are like the law enforcers of this universe. They are, some of them are directly sons of Lord Brahma, or they are sons of Lord Brahma. They're grandsons of Lord Brahma. These are the personalities like Priyavrata, for example, or Uttanapad. Uttanapad was the father of Dhruva Maharaj. And when Uttanapad went to the forest, then Priyavrata was requested by his grandfather, Lord Brahma, and his father, Swayambhuva Manu, to please take the reins of this worldly law enforcement, we can say. He's like completely overseeing all the demigods and everyone. So the Manus, the Manvantaras, they're all empowered personalities by Krishna, and they have enormous durations of time. So the Manus who teach the regulative principles for living entities who desire to achieve success in human life. So the Manus will influence those souls who desire success in life. Those unfortunate souls who don't recognize what is the success of life will have no referencing whatsoever to the Manus. If you walk in some downtown drinking parlor, wherever, they have no idea what is the situation. Now this should give the devotee a very inspired appreciation of actually his position in the world. We are not ordinary souls in the sense that we are ground down entirely by the material energy. The devotee thinks of himself periodically like this, out of his humility. But actually with this kind of fund of knowledge, the devotee is nowhere near that conditioned platform actually, because he's beginning to see the larger, broader picture. And of course, it's all focused on glorification of Krishna. So we can glorify Krishna just separately, but if we have knowledge of all of these aspects of Krishna's creation, how much more empowerment or strength do we possess being in knowledge? You can be in knowledge simply, yes, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yes, that gives everything, that gives the ultimate reality. But unless we have everything else filled in, it's going to be quite a struggle for us. We're going to be believing that actually I am still the center of the universe. So all of this knowledge will purify this false ego. This false ego is so powerful. Even if we take Nam deeply, still this false ego is going to be rearing its head constantly. It's going to be constantly thinking about my situation in this world rather than the broader picture. So all of this knowledge will give us that greater picture of the world that we are inhabiting now in this birth. So it's very inspiring for the sadhak. So this 6th stage is called Manvantara. Now the 7th stage is called Ishanu Kata. Ishan is Ishvara. Ishvara Kata. Knowledge from the scriptures. Scriptural information. We can never appreciate in one tiny little birth the amount of information and experience that the sages of the past have acquired for us. They've acquired for us huge amounts of experiential understanding. If we in wisdom heed carefully those scriptural injunctions, it will short-circuit so much suffering. We don't need to suffer so excessively if we have these understandings from the scripture. So now, regarding Sri Krishna and his incarnations on earth and the activities of his devotees, scriptures dealing with these subjects are essential for progressive human life. Progressive human life. This is the meaning of Aryan. Aryan itself, it means progressive. The Aryan race were progressive because they listened carefully to these scriptural injunctions. Hearing, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Hearing is so important.
Could you give us a translation of that word, Aryan, what it actually means?
Aryan means to go, to progress very quickly. This is what it means, Aryan. The etymology, do you know, Taylor? The etymology of Aryan, I know what it means. It means progressive. Purity.
I vaguely remember that I heard rightly situated also.
Rightly situated, progressive, purity. Yes, these are all referencing Aryan. Also, Aryan also means one description. It means direct like an arrow. When you shoot an arrow, it goes direct. This is like the nature of the Aryan consciousness. So the Aryan race were the embodiment of that elevated consciousness, coming down through the different ages, having the ability and the respect to retain this sacred knowledge and information, to honoring it specifically with the respect it's due and not minimizing it. Just like we see, for example, in the households of any Indian family. You know, even a man, a son living in his house, and he's 30 or 40 years old, first thing, every single morning he will come and try and touch his mother and father's feet. Just that mood of submission, that atmosphere is created by a simple act like that. Immediately it puts you into a respectful state of consciousness. It's not something low and animalistic, like we have come from that world. We have all come from a low, or I have anyway, maybe you are from a different place, but I've come from a low, animalistic culture where nothing is honored except the television and money, etc., and sex life. These kind of things are honored. Totally a reverse of what is pure. Whereas the Aryan race, or there is a remnant, without a doubt, left still in India. Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada used to say, yes, the Vedic civilization has died, but still, like a huge elephant, it has so much effect. Even you see a dead elephant, it has some sort of feeling of greatness about it. So similarly, the Vedic culture, which to all intents and purposes, from the leadership downwards, the leadership today in India is so corrupt, is so neglected. But in the village homes, when you go, you will see a semblance of this respectability towards each other, towards their seniors. Without respecting the seniors, how can we expect to honor scriptural injunctions or information? We have to have that mood. So if that mood is impressed in us from childhood, then how much more easy is it for us to assimilate in maturity? Now for us it's different. This does not, by the way, affect our bhakti one iota. You can come from an adharmic place, or you can come from a dharmic place. If you're still coming to the point of bhakti, it's perfect. It's no disqualification. And there are so many verses within this third canto, in particular, Devahuti, Kapila Deva is repeating to Devahuti, his mother, that even if you're in the family of dog eaters, nevertheless, you are still perfectly eligible for this transcendental link, connection, through devotion to the Supreme Lord. So adharmic or dharmic. It's not someone can confront you and say, oh, well, you have to take birth in Bharatvash or India, and then you will become perfect, and then your next life, then you can actually achieve bhakti. No, absolutely no. For the soul, there is no such thing as material designation. A soul is a pure soul, covered by whatever covering. It is easier, in some senses, to take birth in India and have that atmosphere or background, that support for your practice. Nevertheless, with determination and the compassion of the Mahabhagavats, like our beloved Srila Prabhupada, he walked amongst us and he brought this culture right into the very core of our hearts, in the Western world. He created an atmosphere through his society, and he tried so much to actually inject this speciality of honor and respect amongst us, which he did to such a great degree.
Without wanting to go into this much further, what about having the samskars required to go into higher stages of bhakti? Wouldn't a birth in a dharmic civilization and culture, or more dharmic civilization and culture, rather than adharmic civilization and culture, be beneficial for achieving the higher end stages of bhakti?
Harinamananda Prabhu is asking about the sanskars required to achieve the higher stages of bhakti itself. We don't know what sanskars we have, even though materially we may have taken birth in the West. Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur says in his Bhagavad Gita, he says, if you are in the West and have taken an attraction to Krishna consciousness, it is quite possible that you were a Brahmin in India in your previous birth, but became very proud and puffed up, therefore had to go through this purification of taking birth in the West to purify that pride. So our ultimate sanskar is not dependent on our physical body in this birth. We may have had so much blessings from previous lifetimes as devotees, even though in this birth we've taken birth in the West. This may be for a specific purpose of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Actually, we see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings are more easily assimilated, often by Westerners than by Indians. Because in the Indian culture, they've been brought up with Lord Ramchandra, they've been brought up with Hanumanji, so many demigods like this, and they have to purify all that before they can actually put the crown, the jewel of all avatars, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, at its pinnacle. You'll find even in Vrindavan, so many people worship Radha and Krishna, but they actually don't know the precepts of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I described the other day when Srila Gurudev was proclaimed the Yuga Acharya in Uchagan, how he explained to all those Babajis, actually, my friends, Radha and Krishna were not married. And they were like staggered to hear this. Actually, this is an unwedded relationship he had with Radha. So understand that for those persons, it's very hard for them to appreciate that the Supreme Lord would have an illicit relationship, apparently, materially, with thousands of married women. This is why Mahaprabhu had to advent to explain clearly this Parakiya Ras. Only Mahaprabhu can. Advaita Acharya, he can give some Braja prem, but not in the same way that Mahaprabhu can. Advaita Acharya is like Lord Shiva. Advaita Acharya is so empowered, but he cannot give this Parakiya. He cannot explain it sufficiently to give realization of that. So can you imagine a South Indian family, honorable like Venkatabhata, for example, when Mahaprabhu was staying there in Rangeshwar Mandir, that Sri Rangam, that how could they understand the supremacy of Brajendranandan in Vrindavan? Their whole background and conditioning could not accommodate that idea that Krishna should have an unwedded marriage. Whereas for us in the Western world, it's what every single person in the West is doing practically. I think it's something like 83% of the Western world, they've had second wives. It's like it's so common. Not that that's any help for us to understand Parakiya, but in some sense, it's not such a startling thing for us. And somehow, whatever we can use in this birth to appreciate this exalted Parakiya stage, then we utilize. So, this seventh stage is called Ishan Kata, knowledge, Kata, that those songs spoken in glorification of Sri Krishna from the scripture. So now this is also described on the pages of the Bhagavatam. And then the 8th stage is called Nirodha, Nirodha. This is the 8th stage. I'm explaining these today to reference what I'm doing in presenting the Bhagavatam at the moment. I'm trying to stick something to this format. At the same time, I'm explaining that it's all interwoven. So I'm not going to stick to the format simultaneously. Only devotees can accommodate this sort of contradictory language. Because, as I described before, they have opened the avenues of achintya, inconceivable. If we try and wrap it all down by our material intelligence, we're going to miss something. Like the other day I described how you can't really explain all the Gayatri mantras. If you try and explain them, you kind of put them in a box and say, well, this is all the understanding you can get from this Gayatri mantra. No, it's an evolving growth of consciousness in appreciating the mantras. Simultaneously, throughout the Bhagavatam, it has the same dynamic. Day by day, for the rest of our lives, we are going to be newly inspired and re-nourished by the pages of the Bhagavatam. It's going to constantly be inspiring us to newer heights of appreciation, particularly from the 10th canto, because the 10th canto is the summation, it's the goal. Okay, so Nirodha. Nirodha is fascinating. Nirodha is the winding up of all Krishna's energies. It's employed in creation. Such potencies are emanations from Krishna, who eternally lives in the Karana ocean, the cosmic creation manifested by his breath, and they are again dissolved in due course. So this winding up of all the elements. Now there's a beautiful description of this in the 1st canto even. Remember the pastime when Yudhisthira Maharaj, he's going to the Himalaya. He's left all his kingly duties, going with the Pandavas. And at that time, there's a lengthy description of how he's amalgamating his senses with the next senses, with the next, first the sense objects, and then the sense of perception, etc., winding up then through to the mind, then the mind amalgamating with the higher intelligence, then the intelligence into the false ego, then the false ego into the, ultimately the chitta, then the mahatattva. Then it's all going back and back and back, ultimately coming to sound vibration. Going through all of the, because sound is the first element in the material world. In the creation of existence, everything ultimately manifests from sound. From sound comes ether. And then from ether comes, a sense of touch. From touch comes air. Then from air comes taste, then water, then what is next? Fire, sorry, not water. Form. Okay, to go back again. So sound, ether, touch, air, form, fire, taste, water, fragrance, earth. The way I've just described it is going from the subtle to the gross, from sound to earth, through all the subtle elements. And the withdrawal of that is as equally fascinating as its manifestation. And this is also described. It's also described in the 11th canto, which is the Abhideya Tattva, the method to access the Prayojan. So don't become confused here. I've just overlapped with another consideration, because also the Bhagavatam is broken into 3 parts: Sambandha, Prayojan, and Abhideya. So we should be familiar with these terms also. Sambandha is the relationship, Prayojan is the goal, and the Abhideya is how to access that Prayojan. So these 3 considerations are there. So the 11th canto describes the withdrawal of Krishna personally and all his family members. how they go to Prabhash, they perform that yajna, they become intoxicated, they pick up the cane reeds that have got the iron filings grown into them, and they all annihilate each other. 250 million of the Yadu dynasty are annihilated at Prabhash. I don't know if there's any archaeology proof. Govinda Madhav has experience in archaeology, and he's interested in substantiating these facts with archaeology, which is very fascinating. Yes, this problem. So there are many individuals in the world who also have a similar desire to how to substantiate this with categorical factual evidence, and it's there. There is evidence of all these things if we look hard enough, and it's very inspiring to know that one devotee has an interest in this, to find these particular places, to show various scientists and so on. Yes, look, we have evidence of this, etc. So it's there. So nirodha, the winding up, withdrawing. So the ninth one is called mukti, liberation from the condition of the conditioned soul, engaged by the gross and subtle coverings of the body and mind. When freed from all material affection, the soul, giving up gross and subtle material bodies, can attain the spiritual sky in his original spiritual body and engage in transcendental loving services to the Supreme Lord in Vaikuntha or Krishna Loka. When the soul is situated in his original constitutional position of existence, he is said to be liberated. It is possible to engage in transcendental loving service to the Lord and become Jivan Mukta, a liberated soul, even while in the material body. So this is described by Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. I'm reading his explanations of these stages. So the stage of mukti. The stage of mukti flourishes throughout the Bhagavatam. Simply by hearing, for example, yesterday, of the nascent engagements that Lord Brahma covered the jiva with, automatically there's some slackening there. And I described that by knowledge one becomes liberated. So initially, even just hearing that this impression of the fear of death is placed over us, it's not our constitutional nature to be afraid of death, because for the eternal soul there is no death. There's no such thing as death for the soul. It doesn't die. It's never born. Na jayate mriyate va kadichin. It takes no birth, no death for the soul. So this fear of death, where has it come from? It's come from Lord Brahma. So when you hear that, so this fear of death has been placed over me. It's not a reality. Then I can become less afraid of death. Then this illusion that is placed over me, that I'm the body, the illusion of the material world, this anger after frustration. This has been placed on me. This is not my nature. Therefore I can begin the process of purifying that. And then this false possession, this fifth covering that is placed over the soul. Yes, when I hear about it, then some slackening will come to that attachment to it. When I hear about the false ego and its nature of being attracted to the material energy, yes, when I hear about these topics with knowledge, then some realization, some vidya can come, some vigyan can come rather, realization of these truths. And then with realization of these truths, then I can begin to understand what is the greater truth. So if I have faith, if my faith is made strong from hearing of all these different topics, then when it's spoken about that the supreme welfare and value of all humanity is to render devotion to Krishna, then I have faith in these words also. So the Bhagavatam is giving faith on all levels. It's giving faith in all aspects of the material nature. And the wise, discerning soul can recognize this. He can see, yes, that's true. I can understand that. Yes, I've experienced that. Yes, I can see that. And then from these examples, then my faith can be assured in the truths of the Bhagavatam. And then when the Bhagavatam is mentioning its essential truth, the bhakti sar, this devotion to Krishna, when this is portrayed, then my faith can become increasingly mature. And then I can appreciate more fully these words of the Bhagavatam. So this is the first 9 stages. Okay? Now the 10th stage is called the Ashraya. This is the 10th stage. And this is the transcendental Samam Bonam. This is the Ashraya. Ashraya means the shelter. The shelter of what? The shelter of these other 9 stages that I've mentioned. These other 9 stages, they rest on this Ashraya. Without this Ashraya, the other 9 stages are valueless. They have no meaning. They have no purpose. It's all resting on this 10th stage, this stage of transcendence. Now, this stage of transcendence is brought in right at the very beginning, in the very first line, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This is the transcendental stage. This is the transcendental personality, that Satyam Parama Dhimahi, that Vedavyas talks about in the very first verse. So we see that current of the Ashraya is flowing throughout the Bhagavatam. Practically, at any opportunity, Shukadeva Goswami will begin to glorify Shri Krishna. Throughout all the different pastimes, he will reference Krishna, reference Krishna, reference Krishna. He will weave that in continually through to make this impression within our hearts that yes, this is the only valued object of knowledge. And Bhagavatam is giving so much knowledge. Even the science of the splitting of the atom is described in the Bhagavatam. All of the tiny, minutest constitutes of time is described in the Bhagavatam. What to speak of the enormities of time is described. Clearly, what is it called? Truti and Shruti, the different momentary minutes are described in the 3rd canto also. A Truti is a millionth of a second, and then so there's so many words that describe, minute time. So every aspect of knowledge is there. And yet what a tragedy we see in society today. They have so many big universities and so much, educational ideas, and yet they have no school for the Bhagavatam. There is no college for this knowledge, which encompasses everything in existence. Not only that, but the sweetest commodity that the heart is craving, which is to have a loving, sweet, reciprocal relationship, an eternal relationship. This quality is also flourishing throughout the Bhagavatam. So this Ashraya, let me read what Prabhupada has written, something to describe this. The transcendence, the summum bonum, from whom everything emanates, upon whom everything rests, and in whom everything merges after annihilation. After annihilation means when Rudra and Sankarshan have incinerated this world, and all of these material elements have again been withdrawn. Just as they were created, they are again withdrawn into the body of Mahavishnu. Then that Mahavishnu is still that Supreme Lord. He is the source and support of all, this material world. And then, of course, we have to understand who is the origin of Mahavishnu. And then we have to understand Lord Narayan. And who is his origin? He's manifesting from Sankarshan, who is manifested from ultimately Sri Krishna. And what is Krishna's origin? This is also described in the Chatushloki. Aham eva sam eva gre. Before there was anything in existence, there was only me. I, aham eva se, he's saying in this Chatushloki. So it takes it right back to the very origin of existence and down to this present mundane material life. All is encapsulated within the Bhagavatam. What an amazing scripture. I mean, how phenomenal is it that we have this? So to embark on describing it all in 7 days is a bit ambitious, I've realized. And each day I'm realizing, well, I'm just going to speak a little bit today. And, we'll get to it over the years, But at least get something of the broadness and the immensity of this scripture. And then we can honor it. We can put it in its proper position of honor. We should never live in a house without the Bhagavatam. If you arrive at someone's house and they don't have a Bhagavatam, know the link where they can get one quickly. I know in England, all the different places, I have my connection, I can ring him for £100, you can get the Chaitanya Charitamrita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. You should know in each of your countries where you can access it. And make sure every home, every family that you know has a copy of this. Because one day somebody in that household will read it and will get influenced by this, and the purpose and success of their life will be assured simply from that. So do like this. Srimad Bhagavatam especially describes the Supreme Brahman as the Ashraya. Brahman here is the whole. When we say Supreme Brahman, it's not necessarily talking about the Brahman effulgence. Don't become confused with this. It means the supreme whole, the supreme Brahm, as the Ashraya. Sri Krishna is the Ashraya, and therefore the greatest necessity of life is to study this science of Krishna. He is the resting place, the origin of everything. So we have to purify what? First. What is the greatest obstacle that we have to first purify is our pride. Because that is the nature of the conditioned soul, is pride. So this first place, and this was exemplified by Lord Brahma, as I described yesterday, how when he received this Chatushloki, what was the first question he asked to Krishna? Oh, how will I be freed from pride in making all this creation? That was his first question. How beautiful. How beautiful. He's the architect and designer and creator of this whole world. And yet his first question is, how can I remain humble? How beautiful is that? From Lord Brahma on down. This is the teaching that we have to hear. You had a question, Go? Okay.
I was just going to say,
Huh?
I was just going to say the first question is how to be humble.
Yeah. It's very wonderful. Like Krishna comes and shakes hands with Lord Brahma, I described yesterday. And then Lord Brahma is overwhelmed by the beautiful exchange that he's had with Krishna. Now how can I remain humble? If you receive some type of spurti from Thakurji, if you receive some kind of, mystical revelation wandering around in Vrindavan, if you receive something of this nature, will you be able to remain humble with that? Or will you immediately rush in and want to tell the assembly, oh, do you know what I saw? I just saw blah, 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 blah. How is that going to help really your bhakti? It's described very clearly in Jivadharma when Vijay Kumar, he sees that spurti at Sundarachal when he goes to the Gundicha. And he sees a spurti of Vrindavan. And straight away he thinks, oh, I must tell my Gurudev about this. And then he thinks again, oh no, my Gurudev has told me not to actually reveal these topics. And otherwise I will lose them. I will retain this. Because why do we want to reveal this? To show other people how apparently advanced we have become? Do we want to share very intimately something? If it's to share very intimately and inspire a friend, then it may be beneficial to actually share that revelation. But if it's just to demonstrate your own greatness, that's the last thing we want to do. We want to try and minimize, as I've said repeatedly, our own mood of self-importance. This is the purpose of actually assimilating this Bhagavatam. If we can be, reducing that, because the false ego has the opposite. I have to say this a number of times for my own benefit, so don't worry. I'm saying it for me, not for you. They are what the whole Bhagavatam is resting on. Don't tell them now. There's so much to say. It's like on and on and on and on forever. I was going to tell about Diti today and her two sons and Kadama Muni. It's already 8:25. I haven't even started the class I wanted to give. This is just a very beginning introduction. So how is the mood of the Bhagavatam? Yes, these Chatushlokis are so important. And tomorrow I will begin the class by reading carefully each of these 4 verses. Because they are what the whole Bhagavatam, these 4 verses are what Brahma described to Narada Rishi. Narad opened these 4 verses and described them to Vedavyas. Vedavyas opened them more and described them to Shukadev Goswami. Shukadev Goswami has given 18,000 verses in the Bhagavatam from these 4. There's 18,000 verses here, but they all come from 4. These 4 encapsulate the entire Bhagavatam.
You told us about Lord Brahma's first question.
Yeah, and I deliberately went over the Chatushloki because I knew how much time it would take. And I wanted to make some broader picture of the Bhagavatam to you. So, and at the same time, I want to go in depth into some topics of the Bhagavatam, just to give us a taste directly of its sweetness. And I think we did this yesterday when I described the manifestation of the day and the night and the evening and the dawn. This was a very detailed description of an aspect of the Bhagavatam. So it's to give someone who doesn't really know the Bhagavatam very well at all an idea of actually, well, what does it taste like? You keep talking about its glorification, but what does it actually taste like? So yesterday we gave some little taste of that. So let me just finish this.
How did he do it?
Huh?
How did he do it?
I described it yesterday.
How did he get home? What did he
Oh. No. That's two questions. I described the manifestation of the day and night yesterday. That was like a part of the Bhagavatam. But your question is how to become humble. Then Krishna replies, if you always are thinking of me and understanding that I am the root and the origin of everything. Gurudev has described very clearly a very beautiful line of a description of humility. It means when you always are aware that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the summation of humility. It doesn't mean that I'm walking around with my head bowed down, bumping into walls and things like that, saying, oh, I'm so bereft, I'm so humble. That doesn't really mean humility. Humility means knowing that Krishna is the Supreme Lord everywhere, always.
Swami explained that we had Bhagavatam practically synonymous with praying.
Yes. Humility is synonymous with praying. And envy is synonymous with pride. So this whole world is crackling with envy. Everywhere you look, every paper you pick up, every news item you hear, everywhere in the material world, what is its quality? It's envy. And what is that synonymous with? Pride. So this humility is synonymous with praying. Srila Sanatana Goswami has said in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita. Gurudev also said. But Gurudev described from that an understanding of humility is, or we can become humble by smartavya shatatam Vishnu, vishmartavya nakatuchit. Always remembering Krishna and never forgetting Krishna. In every single last circumstance. There's never a time when he doesn't exist. Rishi.
You can see that in the life, when everybody says the pauper is proud of his penny.
Yeah.
So even if we have nothing,
Yeah.
we're proud.
Yeah.
It's just a little.
Yep. We're proud of everything. We're proud of our shoes. We're proud of our car, our house, family, hairstyle, nose, eyes, anything at all. We're proud of.
Prabhupada talked about the peace formula.
Yeah.
That was very early stages how to maintain remembering Krishna. Krishna is the owner, control. There's a verse in Bhagavad Gita.
What is that famous verse? Harinamananda, Prabhupada disciple. Bhaktaramya Gitapasham Sarvaloko Maheshwaram, that Krishna is the supreme object of all sacrifice and all endeavor, is that Maheshwaram, Sri Krishna. There are many verses. Yes.
There was like three principles, I think.
It's what?
There were like three different principles.
Yeah. This is all in Bhagavad Gita. Listen, this is a nice point that he's bringing up. I'm not going to take the specific point. But in relationship to the scripture of Bhagavad Gita, understand that that is the perfect platform and foundation to actually take us to the Sripad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Swami used to describe the Bhagavatam as being the, what was it, the postgraduate. And the Chaitanya Charitamrita is like the PhD. So, first of all, the understanding of Srimad Bhagavad Gita should be appreciated. And that goes through 4 truths, progressively becoming more and more confidential. There's Guya, Guyata, Guyatatam, Sarva Guyatatam. So these truths from Bhagavad Gita are all pertaining to the body, then the consciousness, then the connection of the consciousness with the Supreme, and then the relationship with the Supreme. 4 stages, from the bodily conception to appreciating what is higher consciousness through meditation, what is more confidential, appreciating who is the Supreme, the Purush, Sri Krishna, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo, Matahar Sarvam Prabhatante. He's the Supreme Lord of all the material and spiritual worlds. And then, even more confidential, what is the relationship between the Jiva and the Supreme? Manmana Bhavavat Bhakto, Madhyaji Manamaskaru, Mamavaishyati Satyamte, Pritijano Priyosime. This verse is actually the most confidential, Sarva Guyatatam. This is the most confidential of the Bhagavad Gita. So if we're familiar and sitting on a foundation of the Bhagavad Gita, then we become very much more eligible to appreciate the precepts of the Srimad Bhagavatam. They're not separate in any way. One is supportive of the other entirely. Prabhupada used to say that the Bhagavad Gita should be the common book for all humanity. But from the Bhagavad Gita, immediately you want to lead to the Srimad Bhagavatam, because Bhagavad Gita only stops at Sharanagati. It doesn't go further than that. It's described as the threshold of bhakti. Sharanagati is the very beginning, to surrender to the Supreme Lord. We're going to hear in the discussion of Kadama Muni, if we can reach that place, how he was worshipping Krishna, but he only was going to Vaikuntha Dham. What was the nature of that relationship? So we have to, because we have been trained by such an elevated Rasik Mahabhagavat personality of Srila Gurudev. He's always taking us into the personal, intimate reality of things. So we always want to go further than just the, objective of Vaikuntha, for example. So these are some understandings. So now it's time to start. I didn't even get to the subject matter today. Let me just finish this. Sorry, lost my spectacles. Trying to speak on these elevated topics and I lost my spectacles. Oh, hiding from me. So now this is interesting. I just want to read the rest of Prabhupada's commentary on the Ashraya. Jamuna, have you understood something this morning? No, it's very basic what I've described. I've described the 10 stages. That's what we can understand. And then I've floated sort of in between them. So you may have got lost there. But at least you've got those 10 stepping stones to the Bhagavatam. This is what I've tried to give very clearly without any abstract idea. Okay? Yeah.
Are these 10 stages in a verse? Like, are they
Yes,
described in
yes,
one
yes.
verse?
It's Canto 2, Chapter 10, verse 1 and 2. Canto 2, Chapter 10, verse 1 and 2. Very good question. Okay. So, the second verse, which I didn't describe, Dasamasya Visuddhyat Artam Navanam Ihi Lokshanam Varnayanti Mahatmana Shrutenartena Chanjasa. And this is saying basically what I've already said in this description of the Ashraya, is that all these 9 stages are resting in the Ashraya. In other words, the predominance of the transcendental reality and goal. This is what Vedavyas was missing. This was his despondency. When he was feeling that something was missing, this was the ingredient. So now it's described, I'll just finish this quickly. 2 different principles are to be considered herein. Now this is Prabhupada's continuing describing the Ashraya. Namely, Ashraya, the object providing shelter, and the Ashrita, the dependent requiring shelter. So I am the Ashrita, I want shelter. And then is the object, Ashraya. We use different terminologies more frequently of the Ashraya and the Vishaya. The Vishaya is like that Supreme Lord, and the Ashraya is the one that takes shelter of that Supreme Lord. But Prabhupada here has used different terminologies. But in basic terms, it's the same understanding of the ashraya and the vishaya. So the ashraya or the ashrita exist under the original principle. The ashraya, so the dependent and that person that is giving dependence. The first 9 cantos categories described in the first 9 cantos, from creation to liberation, including the Purusha avatars, the incarnations, the marginal energy or living entities, and the external energy, the material world, are all ashrita. So these first 9 cantos are described as seeking shelter of the ashraya. All of these descriptions. What are these descriptions? Priyavrata, the Manvantaras, Jad Bharat, the demigods, the Pandavas, all these different Kadama Rishi, who else? Prahlad, Hiranyakashipu. I'm just describing all of the Bhagavatam in the 9 cantos. Ambarish, Ajamil, all of these, Gajendra, all of these personalities, they're all, we can see at a glance, resting on the ashraya, aren't they? All of these 9 cantos, they're all resting on the ashraya, all of them. It's only when Krishna takes birth in Goloka Vrindavan or takes birth in Mathura as Sri Vishnu and then as Brajendranandan in Golok that it becomes the ashraya, it becomes the origin of these previous 9 cantos. Okay? The prayers of the Bhagavatam, however, aim at the ashraya. So this is the exception. Within these 9 cantos, there are various prayers. Like Prahlad, he's praying to Nrsingadev. Very beautiful. These prayers are aimed at the ashraya. They're not the ashraya themselves. They're aimed at the ashraya. Understand? Ashraya Tattva Sri Krishna. The great souls, expert in describing Srimad Bhagavatam, have very diligently delineated the other 9 categories, sometimes by direct narration and sometimes indirectly, such as stories. The real purpose of doing this is to know perfectly the absolute transcendence Sri Krishna, for the entire creation, material and spiritual, rests on him. So that is what this Bhagavatam is really, it's actually giving us humility. It's giving us that vital ingredient. How many times, practically every single day, did our Gurudev say this verse? Trinada pi sunichena, taroda pi suhishana, amanina manadena kirtanya sadhari. He said it every day of his life practically. If you read those Walking with the Saint commentaries, practically every day in some circumstance, Srila Gurudev is saying this, because this is the vital ingredient of progress for our lives. Our misconception is that we are someone of something importance. That's our misconception. And that's what always, like, even as devotees, especially if you start to become a little bit old devotee, especially if you become a sannyasi, or you become like guru, how much will people try and make you feel you're very important? They will give you so much honor, etc. How much more purified must you be to digest that? To actually purify that? It doesn't become easier, but you become more humble. If you don't become more humble, you're finished. You just, they say that you get the sannyas danda so that Gurudev can beat you over the head with it. So that he can take away the pratishta that comes in that ashram. But don't think that pratishta only comes in the sannyas ashram. It comes in all ashrams. We're not the only ones who have to actually purify this. In any condition, it only seems to be more apparent and more obvious. So people can point it out, look at him, he's so puffed up. But actually you can see it everywhere. It's still there. So it's not the exception, the sannyas ashram. Anyway. Endeavor for this, strive for this, hear this. If we've said anything this morning, it's to focus on what is the practical objective of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is to appreciate this humble quality, which is what Lord Brahma showed right at the very beginning. So tomorrow morning, obviously it'll take the whole morning to even begin to describe the 4 Chatushlokis. So, but we will explain that, and I'll leave out the various pastime stories that I wanted to describe as well. So, actually, somehow or other, we need to have a school, and we need to have every single day Srimad Bhagavatam for 12 months. If we had like that, that would be the most ecstatic experience I could imagine. Quite frankly, having an opportunity to discuss with devotees every single day the entirety of the Bhagavatam. You know, serious. Like we discussed yesterday, like the story of Gokarn, for example, when the Bhagavatam was recited in front of a great assembly, plus this ghost of Dundubi. He was hiding in the hollow of the bamboo, and he was so fried with his ghost body, and he so much wanted this divine knowledge with all his heart and soul. He was smashed thoroughly. So when he heard it with such rapt attention that every day one of these knots in the bamboo would explode, and no one quite knew why it was, you know. And then at the end, this beautiful airplane came and picked up just him. They all think, why did he go? We were all listening as well. But then it was explained afterwards that actually you were not listening with the same intention of greed. You didn't have the same desperation. So don't make it that Krishna has to make you more poor, rip away all of your, material necessities to reach this desperation stage. You become desperate now. Even with a few pennies in your pocket, you can still have a desperation for the truth. Don't let Krishna rip everything away and reduce you to a totally materially poverty-stricken condition, and only then you will become desperate. Perhaps we've been put in the bodies of Westerners so as to actually become more desperate. I believe that in the Western bodies we are more desperate because we're so challenged mentally with so much rubbish they throw at us in the environment that we have to become desperate to get the heck out of here. You know? So that desperation is what's needed to be purified, to come into the desire to create this intimate understanding of my personal relationship with Radha and Krishna in Seva. Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Gurudev ki jai. Ananta Gauta Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Shri Gauranga Mahaprabhu ki jai. Shri Radha Gopinath Ju ki jai. Gaur Premanande. Hare Bol. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Oh Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Oh Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Oh Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Oh Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Oh Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Haribo, Gaura Haribo. O Jaya Sachinandan Jaya Gaura Hari, Sachinandan Jaya Gaura Hari. Gaura He, Gaura He, Gaura He, Gaura He. O Jaya Radha, Gopinath Radha, Gopinath Radhe. Jaya Radhe, 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 Shri Radhe. O Jaya Vrishabhanu Nandini, Radhe, Radhe, Vrishabhanu Nandini, Radhe, Radhe. O Radhe, 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 Radhe. Sachinandana Gaura Hari Ki Jai, Shri Radha Gopinath Ju Ki Jai, Shrimati Radharani Vrishabhananandini Brajeshwari Jai, Srila Gurudev Ki Jai, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Gopinath Bhavan Ki Jai, Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Jamuna Devi Maharani Ki Jai, Vrinda Devi Maharani Ki Jai, Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai, Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bol.